Hi, my name is Hina, and I am here today to give a talk on the food of Old Lahore. I'm originally from Pakistan. I'm from Lahore, and I'm coming to you right now from Canada. I now live in Toronto, and I want to thank Delhi Food Walks and Anubhav for inviting me to give this talk. I have a presentation prepared with pictures, and we're gonna do a little tour of Old Lahore, and let's get started. Okay, so food tour of Old Lahore, brought to you by Hina. We are going to share pictures of the food, the markets, the architecture, and the people of Old Lahore. I took these photographs when I visited Lahore a few years back. So the first picture on the top is of Gowalla Mundi, which is also called Food Street. And below that, you can see fresh rotis being made in Anarkali Bazaar. And on the right is a spice market at Delhi Gate. All right. Okay, here is a map of Lahore. Just a quick overview of the city and some of its neighborhoods. You can see on the right, Allama Iqbal International Airport. That is the main airport of Lahore. We are going to be focusing on the highlighted area of Old Lahore on top. That area is also called Androon Lahore, Androon meaning the inner city. And in the map, you can see that Androon Lahore, it's quite far away from the newer, more suburban parts of Lahore as it grew out over the decades. So getting to Old Lahore from Johor Town or Defence or Garden Town is quite a journey, especially if there's traffic, which there tends to be quite a lot of traffic in Lahore. And I've been told that GT Road, which you can see here on the map, is quite an iconic road. People in India know about it too. So there's GT Road that kind of cuts in through Old Lahore too. Here's a closer look at Old Lahore. So we're going to be focusing on 5 major areas of Old Lahore. These are not the only areas of Old Lahore. There are other neighborhoods and bazaars, but we're going to be focusing on 5 of them, namely Anarkali Bazaar. So that's at the bottom. You'll see Anarkali Bazaar. There's a Mayo Hospital Museum, Lahore Museum, and there's Anarkali Bazaar there. And then as you move up on the left, there's Data Darbar, which is a shrine. And next, we're going to go into the walled city of Old Lahore. And we'll talk a bit about why it's called the walled city. And we're also going to explore Delhi Gate. So you can see that on the right of the screen, next to GT Road, there's a Delhi Gate and Masjid Wazir Khan. And I think Delhi Gate is a very appropriate name, given we're having this talk on Delhi food walks. And lastly, we are going to go to Gowalla Mundi. That's where our food tour of Old Lahore will end. All right, so let's get this tour started. So we are starting our tour down here in Anarkali. So Anarkali Bazaar, it's one of the oldest surviving markets in South Asia, and it dates back at least 200 years. And Anarkali, mainly you find textiles, garments, and jewelry, and a few other markets that we'll go through as well. And when I was a kid, when I used to live in Lahore, I would go to Anarkali with my mother for shopping, especially around Eid and other celebrations, because you can get, as women, a lot of shopping to be done, jewelry, clothes, shoes, whatnot. And so Anarkali is one bazaar, but it has many smaller markets within it. And each of the markets specializes in selling a particular item, such as shoes. So there'll be a market that sells just shoes, or jewelry. There'll be a market that sells just jewelry. So we'll look at what some of these markets are in Anarkali. So as you're walking towards Anarkali, as you get closer and closer, one of the first things you see as you go towards the bazaar are different varieties of street food, such as fruit stands selling fresh fruit juice. In the summertime, sugarcane juice is a very popular fruit juice to drink. And there are some iconic fruit chart shops that have been here in Anarkali. They've been around for decades, and they're always busy and bustling with people because of how popular they are. And personally, I've lived in Canada for a long time now, and I really miss these fruit stands that you find because living in Canada, it's quite cold for a long period of the year, and you start to miss the abundance of and variety of fresh fruit that's available in Pakistan year round, and you can just have a pomegranate juice pretty much anytime you want. So here's another fruit vendor cutting into a mango. Mango is a very popular fruit in Pakistan. Pakistan cultivates over 200 varieties of mangoes, which are exported all around the world. And we even get some here in Canada for a few weeks during the summer. They sell out pretty quickly. Sometimes when you're late to the grocery store, it's like, oh, all the mangoes are gone. Okay, so now that we're in one of the inner markets of Anarkali. So one of the markets within Anarkali Bazaar is Kucera Bazaar, where you can find all sorts of kussas. And a kussa is a traditional handcrafted footwear in Pakistan, usually made by local artisans. So in this market, all the shops are selling kussas, and it's a beautiful sight to see because the kussas they're artistically embellished with intricate work done on them in gold and silver, and you can see it in the picture. The colorful handiwork, it's spectacular, and the smell of the tanned leather in the market makes you feel like you're transported to another world. I got a pair when I was there last, and they really are pieces of work. Next, we have Bangle Market, where you can find all sorts of churia in Anarkali Bazaar. This is a particularly popular spot on Eid because women come here to buy bangles and churia that they'll wear with their new outfits on Eid. Up next, we have Bangle Bazaar in Anarkali, where you have a mind-boggling amount of costume jewelry. Much of it is gold-plated, and you can find every color, design, and style imaginable that you can wear to accent your outfits. Bangle Bazaar is one of the largest and busiest costume jewelry markets in all of Lahore. And being here, walking down the corridors with gold glittering everywhere around you in the fluorescent lights, it really feels like you're in some far away mythical land of gold and shimmer. It's quite beautiful, and I hope you can get an idea of what it might be like from some of these pictures. Another market within Anarkali Bazaar is a book market, and it's commonly known as Urdu Bazaar, where you can find all sorts of books in English, Urdu, or Punjabi. There's textbooks, novels, reference books, poetry, history books, and for all ages. When I was here, when I visited Lahore last, I bought 2 children's storybooks for myself so I could practice my Urdu when I'm here in Canada and not forget it entirely. I think I bought books at the grade 4 level. Got to work on my Urdu. So Anarkali Bazaar has a food area and a shopping area. So all these markets that we just saw, Urdu Bazaar, Bangle Bazaar, Kucera Market, they're located in the shopping district of Anarkali Bazaar. And in the shopping district, there aren't many restaurants or sit-down places to eat, since people are there to shop. So if you get hungry when you're shopping, the best thing to do is grab something quick to eat from one of the numerous street vendors around. So an example would be this man here selling sliced coconut with ice in the middle to keep the coconuts cool, because when it's 50 degrees outside and you're walking around for hours, cold coconut can be quite refreshing and hydrating. Here you have one of the most iconic street foods of Lahore, shakarkandi, which is clay oven baked sweet potato. It's served hot with a sprinkle of chaat masala and lime on top, or kala namak, or an assortment of spices, depending on what you prefer. This is a delectable street food, and you can find it most often during the winter months. Personally, I love this. When I was in Lahore, I visited during the winter months, and I couldn't eat enough of it when I was there. Every time I'd go out, I'd be like, "Can we get shakar please? Can we please get shakar?" It's really good, and I will show you a recipe at the end of the talk that you can try out for yourself at home and get a taste of what it might be like to eat this. All right, so now we are kind of moving away from Anarkali Bazaar. A little further down in Old Lahore, from Anarkali is Kucera Bazaar, which is one of the oldest pots and pans market in Lahore. This is where you would come to buy your household pots to cook for a family, or if you're preparing a feast at home for guests. These are your everyday use cooking pans that most households would have. From stainless steel to brass and everything in between. Here you see a group of ladies haggling to get the best prices on the pots they want to purchase, because you always have to get the best deals. Haggling is a big part of Pakistani shopping culture. And in addition to cooking pots, Kucera Bazaar also has antiques, copper, real silver, brass. And here you see a shopkeeper. He's sitting in front of his shop selling vintage antiques that could date back decades. So I bought one of the antique pots from here, and the guy who was selling it, he had to scrub it clean because it had been, I don't know how long it had been sitting in his shop, years, maybe even decades. And there's also earthenware, so large clay pots, which back in the olden days were used for storing water. You can see the picture of those up on top. They're hand painted. And on the right, you see large cauldrons, which are ideal for cooking at a large gathering, such as at weddings. And there's also firni served in clay pots. So the picture on the bottom left. When I was young, I used to love eating firni with these little wooden spoons that you see. And the clay pots, they are kept on huge blocks of ice, so the firni stays cold and fresh. And eating it on a hot summer day, walking around in Anarkali, it's a wonderful feeling, and it's a wonderful experience. All right, so that is one area, small area of Old Lahore that we've covered. So we've covered Anarkali Bazaar and Kucera Bazaar, and now we're going to make our way over to Data Darbar. And that Data Darbar is one of the largest Sufi shrines in all of Asia. And on the way to Data Darbar from Anarkali Bazaar, you find lots of roadside restaurants, people eating foods and snacks, and flower shops selling flowers, so you can adorn the Data Darbar, the shrine, with flowers if you want when you're visiting. This area is also home to many popular breakfast places, which are super busy on the weekends. Chai. Of course, chai, which is like the national drink of Pakistan. Here you see doodh patti being made. It's strong and it's aromatic, and chai is a big part of life and food culture in Pakistan. And I'm a big chai drinker. I couldn't get enough of it when I was there, and I drink a lot of chai here at home in Canada as well. Here you see a man bagging halwa for people on the go or for people to eat it at home. Halwa puri is an extremely popular breakfast combination in Pakistan, in Lahore as well. It's a heavy and rich and satisfying meal, and it's a staple for many families to have halwa puri breakfasts. And often you can eat halwa puri with the savory chana aloo, which balances the flavor. So you have the very sweet halwa with the puri and then the savory chana aloo, and it's just the trifecta of flavors and taste just melting in your mouth. It tantalizes all the taste buds, and sitting along the side of the street in Old Lahore with the hustle and bustle of life all around you, the sounds of motorcycles and rickshaws and people walking by, and eating this with your family for breakfast on the weekend. It's such an experience. It really is a way of life. And as a kid, my family would go to Old Lahore every Sunday in the winters and partake in this very Lahori tradition of eating halwa puri breakfasts on the weekend. Here you see a fresh lassi being made from yogurt. This again is a very popular drink because it's cold and it freshens and hydrates you, especially in the summer months. You can have your lassi sweet, you can have it salty. I always preferred it to be a little on the sweet side. Pakistani Truck Art. These trucks are famous world over for their bold colors and funky patterns, and the trucks are adorned with all sorts of jingling noisemakers. So when they drive by, you can't miss one of these trucks. And this is a common sight to see in the inner streets of Old Lahore. These big trucks passing through the very, very narrow streets, transporting all sorts of food and goods throughout the city and the country. And taking a car to the bazaars and markets of Androon Lahore is not the best way to get around, considering how narrow the streets are and how much traffic there is. So people either go to the inner city on motorcycles or public transport, such as on rickshaws, and then they walk around to get to the narrowest parts of the market. Here is a real treat that people travel to Old Lahore from far and wide to eat: lamb pie, or lamb trotters, which are the gelatinous feet of a lamb. It's not something that a lot of people eat at home because it's like a feast to prepare almost. So going to Old Lahore to eat pie is at one of the restaurants famous for making them is another very Lahori experience. This is a real culinary delicacy in Pakistani cuisine, and I wish I had learned to appreciate the exquisite value of this dish when I was younger and eaten them at every opportunity that I could get. When I was a kid, it was like, oh, ew, lamb feet. But now I'm like, oh my God, this restaurant has pie. They're really good. Here you see the man, he's basting the pie in their juices to prevent the meat from drying out before serving it to his patrons. And we have finally reached the gates of Data Darbar, which, like I said earlier, the largest Sufi shrine in South Asia. And it's a common sight to see people praying outside the shrine, like you see in this photograph, adorning it with flowers and offering their prayers, asking for health and wealth and happiness. And if people have time, they may even go inside the shrine to offer their prayers and spread flowers inside the shrine. And right next to the Darbar is this little market where you can see day laborers stopping by to get food on their breaks or getting food to take home for their families. In the picture, they're being served quite a simple meal, but it's nutritious. It's dal served on roti. And this is right next to the shrine of Data Darbar, right next to the picture that I showed earlier, where this is. All right, so that was the Data Darbar area. Moving on from there, we're going into the walled city of Old Lahore. So it's called the walled city because back in the Mughal era, Old Lahore had 13 gates that were built around it as official ports of entry into the city. And not all of these gates are still standing today, but within the walled city are some of the biggest and most popular monuments of Lahore. For example, Lahore Fort, which is a citadel and it's within the walled city, and it has these beautiful, well-manicured gardens right in front of it. And right next to Lahore Fort is Badshai Masjid, which is another Mughal-era mosque, and it's considered one of the most iconic symbols of Lahore. It's the largest mosque of the Mughal era and the second largest mosque in Pakistan today. So historically, back in the Mughal times, there was a market right next to Badshai Masjid, which was for entertainment purposes. And over the decades, that area around the mosque, it retained that aspect of entertainment from bygone eras and became what you would call the red light district of Lahore. But in recent years, there's been a push to make this area around the mosque more family friendly. And so one of the things that has happened is the area around Badshai Masjid has been turned into food street. So you can see in this picture that there are these buildings that were in the past in poor shape, but because the government saw the cultural significance and the rich history of this area, these neighborhoods around the masjid, they have been reinvigorated and are now home to some of the most upscale and trendy restaurants in Old Lahore. So all the lights that you see on the right side, so on the left you have Badshah Masjid, and on the right you have Food Street, lit up at night. And this is new food street, and the reason I'm calling it new is because there was an old food street called Gowalla Mundi that we'll get to as well. So after decades of neglect, the government took measures to restore the cultural significance of this bazaar, and along with the latest developments of preserving art and history, you can experience what life would have been like here in bygone eras of Lahore. So some of the most highly coveted restaurants known for their cuisine are located here now in New Food Street. And sometimes you have to make reservations and they're like fully booked, and you have to wait like weeks or months to get a table to, visit. Here we are back again at Badshah Masjid during the day. This is the monumental gateway that leads you into the masjid. And right next to Badshah Masjid is a Sikh mausoleum, the Samadhi of Ranjit Singh, which is an 18th century mausoleum housing the urns of the Sikh ruler Ranjit Singh. It is located right adjacent to Lahore Fort and Pakistani Masjid, and along with the Gurdwara Dera Sahib, which marks the spot where the fifth guru of Sikhism, Guru Arjan Dev, he died. So there's a beautiful mix of culture, religion, and history concentrated in this one area in the old city. You have Pakistani Masjid, you have a Sikh mausoleum, and you have a Gurdwara. So that's always a beautiful thing to see. Okay, so moving on, we are going to Delhi Gate, which I think is a wonderful coincidence with having this talk on Delhi food walks. Delhi Gate is one of the last standing gates of the 13 gates that were originally built around the city. The gate was named after Delhi since the gate opened east in the general direction of Delhi. And during the Mughal era, the gate it was the main gateway to Lahore, and its doors were shut every evening. The surrounding area includes several buildings of historical significance, and this is the entrance. And as you can see right above the entrance in Urdu, it says Delhi Gate on top. As soon as you enter Delhi Gate, there's an outdoor market. And again, bad idea to come here in a car. Rickshaw is the best option. And then once past the gate, you have to go on foot. And the market has lots of shops selling bulk food items such as lentils, legumes, rice, and spices. It's not retail shopping, but it's intended to sell sacks for mass use, such as for a restaurant or a big event. There's also flower vendors if you want to take flowers to the nearby recently restored Masjid Wazir Khan, considered to be one of the most ornately decorated Mughal era mosques, with intricate embellished murals lining the inner walls of the mosque. So this mosque and the Delhi Gate area had been in decline for decades because of neglect. But in the last 10 to 15 years, much of it has been restored, thanks to funding from the Aga Khan Foundation. So that's amazing for preserving this historical and cultural gem. And it was my first time visiting Masjid Wazir Khan when I went to Lahore a couple of years back, and it really is a sight to behold. Here you have another store in the Delhi Gate market selling traditional caps worn by local men in the city. Another vendor selling an assortment of snacks like chane and chips and coconut. So talking about Old Lahore, it's not possible to talk about the food in Old Lahore without talking about the people and the history and the architecture, where it all comes together, without mentioning the smells and feels of the market, the aroma of spices, the hustle and bustle, the haggling. That is all part of the experience of going to the old city. All right, so now we are moving on to the last stop in this tour, which is Gowalla Mundi, also known as Old or the Original Food Street. When I was a kid, Gowalla Mundi was the one and only food street in Lahore. So when people said they were going to Food Street, this is where they meant. In the 90s, there was a push by the government to reinvigorate the food culture of Old Lahore. And so they invested heavily in restoring the buildings and architecture of Gowalla Mundi. The buildings were painted different colors. At night, they were lit up. So no cars were allowed to enter. And there would be people and food and colors and lights till as far as you could see. It felt like a magical place. So this was the original food street, as opposed to the new food street next to Badshah Masjid that we saw earlier. That is nice too. But in my opinion, Gowalla Mundi was a more visceral experience because all the iconic food joints are located here. So your famous Lahore Tawa fish fry is in Gowalla Mundi. And you sit by the side of the road under the lights and watch the world go by while enjoying some of the best food, I think, in the world. But in recent years, Gowalla Mundi and Old Food Street has sort of faded from memory, and people now want to go to new food streets since it's more chic and hip and upscale. And Gowalla Mundi doesn't get the love that I feel it deserves anymore, and it's in a state of neglect. But it's still a wonderful place to visit and is home to the most well-known food joints in the city. For example, Amritsari harissa, which is a stew made with meat and lentils, spices and rice, and it's slow cooked overnight, and in the morning all the flavors just melt together and it's delicious to eat with fresh naan. And this particular restaurant in the picture is famous in Lahore for its harissa, and in the photo you can see the gentleman bagging harissa for someone on the go. This you won't find anywhere other than Gowalla Mundi, because Gowalla Mundi is the original food street of Lahore. And that brings us to the end of our tour. Here are some random pictures from around Old Lahore that I took when I was there. You have Anarkali Bazaar on top. You have kapde and jode for women to buy. On the bottom is Kucera Bazaar. There's an antique store in Kucera Bazaar. And on the right, there's this gentleman who really wanted me to take his photograph. This is in New Food Street at nighttime, and you see the gentleman walking around, and he was very eager for me to take his picture, and I did, and I'm kind of glad I did. He's a good-looking guy. Here's some more pictures. There's a street vendor selling dates, all sorts of different kinds of dates. Top picture. The bottom is a picture of some of the beautiful handicrafts locally made in Lahore by experienced artisans. And the picture on the right is painted murals on the walls of Masjid Wazir Khan. So this is just one wall. All the walls in the masjid have these intricate, colorful murals painted on them. I can't end this tour without mentioning my Mamu, who took me to the old city on his bike, and I was able to experience such a unique aspect of Lahore because of him. He was, you may have noticed, he was in many of the pictures I shared today. He's lived in Lahore his whole life, and I'm so grateful to him for making this memorable experience happen for me. And he loves Lahore. It was so easy to tell how much pride he had in his heart being from Lahore, and he really wanted me to understand what being a Lahori meant. And I'm so grateful that he took me around and he showed me Androon Lahore on his bike. So that's the end of our talk. I'd like to end this talk with a famous Punjabi saying we have about Lahore, which goes in Punjabi, "Jinne Lahore nahi vekhya, oh jamya hi nahi." So if I were to translate it, it means someone who hasn't seen Lahore has not yet been born, which I think just might have some truth to it. I might be biased. So if you'd like to connect with me or see more photos of Lahore, or tell me whether, if you enjoyed this tour, you can find me on Instagram at Hina_explores or on Twitter at Hina Tweets Now. Thank you again to Anubhav and Delhi Food Walks for inviting me to talk about the food in Old Lahore. I hope you guys had as much fun watching and listening as I had talking about Lahore. And so before I go, I would like to just share one last thing. This is a great cookbook about Pakistani food. It's called Summers Under the Tamarind Tree. It's by Sumaya Osmani. She's a Pakistani author from Karachi. She lives in Scotland. And this book has some of the most popular dishes in Pakistani cuisine. The recipes are amazing. I have tried and tested every recipe in this book numerous times, and it really is authentic Pakistani food, as they say. And in the book, there is a recipe for shakarkandi. So if you remember shakarkandi, it's a baked sweet potato, very popular street food in Lahore. So there's a recipe for that. So if you can get your hands on a copy of this book, I highly encourage you to check it out and try this recipe for shakarkandi if you can, just to kind of get just a little bit of taste of Lahore. Thank you again, and bye guys.